Welcome to the Serve Campus podcast, a resource for campus ministry workers and volunteers across Canada, providing inspiration, education, and coaching for people leading ministries on post-secondary campuses. Our goal is to encourage and resource you in your vital work on universities, colleges, institutes, wherever you are. Today, we have a special guest, Lance Neubauer. So grab a cup of coffee, enjoy the show, and let's kick it over to John.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to our podcast. Hey, Jordan, how's it going?
It's going well.
Over there.
Well. How are you doing?
Over there in Saskatchewan.
Nice and warm, nice and sunny. Not a whole lot happening in Regina usually, but that's okay. We like the quietness.
And Lance over in Manitoba, great to have you here. And how's the environment there for you today?
Oh, it's great. The weather's picked up. Rained a lot here in the spring, but it's starting to turn, so it's pretty nice. Everyone's enjoying it. It's been really good.
Yeah, awesome. Well, over here in BC, I think our temperatures are actually higher than both of you. We had 33 degrees yesterday, and that's 91 degrees Fahrenheit for anybody that cares about Fahrenheit. But
calling back to your roots there, John, eh?
Yeah. So it was a warm day. I was wishing for a swimming pool or something. Anyway, great to have you, Lance, with us today. And I'm excited about what we're going to be hearing from you as you've been around for a while now in Manitoba in campus ministry, and you recently had a transition. And so with that, I'm going to just turn it back over to Jordan, and we'll kick it off.
Awesome. So fun fact, I don't know, what year were you at Horizon, Lance?
17 maybe?
Yeah. So
right?
Was it 16 or was it 17?
Yeah.
I think we were in one class together at least, or we were, maybe you were the year after, but.
No, you were there.
I was there.
You were graduating the year that I was starting, I believe.
Oh, okay. So it was 17. There you go. 2016, 17. So, yeah. So I don't know you super well, Lance. I'm excited to get to know you even more. But it's crazy how in the church world paths cross quite often. So it's good to have you today. And yeah. So tell us a bit about yourself. Where did you grow up, and how long have you lived in Winnipeg?
So I grew up just outside Winnipeg, small rural town, Neubauer, for about 18 years. After that, moved to Winnipeg from 18 to 39, what I am now. I spent that 1 year in Saskatoon when I was at Bible school when I met you. Mm-hmm. And then other than that, that was just pretty much in the prairie areas especially, and in and around Winnipeg. It's almost like in Manitoba, if you're from anywhere, you'll just say you're from Winnipeg because Winnipeg's the only major center in the whole province.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. So there's really very little.
I have heard that before. Maybe Jacob Murphy said that. I don't know. Someone said that. Yeah. Man. Yeah. So at Horizon, did you what did you graduate with there? What did you get there? For school?
So I came in the first year and I got a certificate in Christian ministry, and I completed that, and I used that kind of as a springboard to go to the next level. Yeah. And from there, I took my credential classes through the PAOC, Holy Spirit in the Church, and the history classes and that kind of thing. And then I was working my way towards the diploma. And I never quite got there because I got into the mission field and I had kids and I started a business, and, I'll do it next year. Which I remember my first year, they told us not to do because they said, once you turn the tap off, it's hard to get it started again. But yeah, so I never actually completed anything past that, but I'm glad I got the Christian certificate in place. So I at least had something finished. And I'm only maybe 7 classes away from being at a diploma, so I'm pretty close. Yeah.
Would you do that one day?
I would do it one day for sure. Yeah, totally.
Good for you.
Yeah, because after you're not in school for a while and you feel your brain losing its edge a little bit, You know what I mean? Especially sometimes with theology and stuff like that. You know, those thoughts would come a little quicker and you realize you haven't
Yeah.
really been to the gym in a while, right?
Or when an argument springs up and you're just like, oh, I don't want to deal with
Yeah,
that. Whether it's
Yeah.
on theology or culture or whatever.
yeah, I used to be better than this.
I mean, you're always game to argue about Calvinism, aren't you, or no?
Oh yeah, that's what that was at
There you go.
yeah. Yeah,
Oh, man.
I thought it was interesting because I wasn't raised Christian. Went
Mm,
to the church a little bit, but not much really, right? So I didn't know anything about like a little bit about Christ in a general sense, but certainly nothing about like systematic theology, right?
yeah.
Um, so when I got there, I didn't know free will theology versus like, you know, Calvinist Reformed theology and how contentious it was in the history of the church or
Right.
whatever. Right? Like I'm there hearing about it for the first time, right? But like people have these strong opinions. So
Well,
kind of like,
you know what's cool about that, Lance, is right now I do ministry on campus in Regina, the University of Regina, and there's people that have grown up in the church, and they're now just finding these like different theologies and arguments as well, and they're really interested in learning all the sides of each one. And so it's interesting, like you experienced that at Bible school, and now people are kind of experiencing it because they're hearing it from their friends or whatever, and in a totally secular environment. I think it's kind of interesting, but because
and
people
it's
just don't
really
know, they don't know the different sides of church history, or the different people don't know.
not,
So yeah, it's interesting.
and it's not theology that tears people apart. Like it's people that tear people apart, right?
There you
Like
go.
you can't, if I can have a conversation between, you know, Reformed theology and Arminianism theology without hating the other person, like is that Reformed theology's fault or is that my fault?
That's a good
Yeah,
conviction. That's a good one.
Like,
Yeah, I like that.
exactly. And I go with that, Lance. That's a good bit of wisdom there.
yeah. And I'm the type of person too who like forms my thought through that sort of like argumentation and hearing the other side and having to come up
Mhm.
with a quick answer. Like it really, that just kind of helps me shape my opinion on something, like just the way I'm wired. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's important that we don't go into these camps and the various, perspectives that we're talking about with arrogance, but with humility, because there's truth to those camps and either side. And so, we can find affinity with our brothers and sisters on a lot of essential areas. But you mentioned that hey, you weren't raised in the church, and that this is what was all new to you, going to Bible school at Horizon. And I'm sure we could talk a lot about your Bible school experience, but love to know about how you came to embrace Jesus as your Lord, and what did that look like for you in your journey of faith?
Yeah. So for me, like I'd gone a little bit as a kid because I was from a small Mennonite town, but my family wasn't Christian. So by the time I was a teenager and you really start to make that like decision of which way you're going to go, right? At that time, it just looked like, you know, one side had a whole bunch of rules. One side kind of let you go and do what you wanted to do. And there was no pull at home to go in a direction, right? So I was just naturally picked the side where I felt more free. Um, and I just did that. So I started drinking at a young age. You know, it's just all fun and games at first as a teenager. Nothing's really bad's happening yet. And it just progressively got worse. And then over my life, I would end up doing cocaine. I would end up doing meth. I would end up doing ecstasy, opiates, all of these different kinds of drugs, just slowly, bit by bit, just becoming basically desensitized to it, like, you know, through friends and experience kind of thing, right? And then obviously that back roll of the problems it's going to cause you in your life is going to come. There's just no two ways around it. And then when I was 19, I remember I was shot execution style in the back of my head with a 45 revolver while I was sitting in my friend's car. And I ducked to get away from it. And the guy put the gun, right behind my ear, pulled the trigger, and the bullet went through the back of my skull, out my mouth, and then lodged into my leg. And like, that was crazy, right? Like we took off, we flew out of there. They put me on life support. They saved my life. And then within a week, I was out of the hospital. It was crazy. All I had was a broken jaw and a bullet in my leg. And that was it. I was like, it was just like, did that just happen? You know what I mean? There was just so much quick trauma and then such a quick turnaround, and then nowhere to go for help, right? Or nowhere I was willing to go for help. So I just convinced myself I didn't have any problems with it, and I just drank. And then I just did drugs, and I just let that experience kind of just build up in me, and denying it until it just turned into a bunch of really bad habits that I couldn't find my way out of. So like for years and years after that, I would still do drugs. I would still like do cocaine and these sorts of things. I was getting arrested all the time. And it wasn't until I was 25 years old, when I was an opiate addict and I was dependent on opiates to live every day, that I finally just had enough. I couldn't take it anymore. And I went and I got clean. And when I was getting clean, I just, like, I had no real desire to follow God or anything like that. But I just knew at this point in my life, there's nowhere to go. You know what I mean? Like there's nowhere to go. I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't do anything. So I figure I'll try church, because whatever. And I just can't really explain what happened. But when I went, I felt something. Some sort of feeling, almost like I'm sober now, but I'm feeling, it's like a high, kind of like, it's just, there's some sort of reaction like that that's happening inside of you that shouldn't be happening when you're sober. And then I just started over the next 5 years chasing that. Like what happened there? How come I went to a church service and like cried? How come that touched my heart when the pastor spoke about Jesus? Why did I have this deep sense of conviction? Like what was that feeling, and why is this going on? And I just chased that. And while I did that for about 5 years, I still fell into addiction. I still did cocaine. I still got in trouble. All of this stuff. I wasn't really fixed. And then finally one day when I was about 30 years old, I had a friend die suddenly, and at his funeral, I just had this massive awakening where I just saw God in a way that I've never seen him. And I just knew that my time was short on this earth, and I had to make this decision, right? Like, God allowed me to date him for 5 years, but he was, he wanted a commitment, right? It became abundantly clear that, if you're going to follow Christ, you got to make the commitment, right? You got to be totally committed to it. And at that point, I made the total commitment to him. And then that was it. I went out, I got baptized. I told everybody about Jesus. I was that guy. Like, you know what I mean? I would in my truck, my work truck, and I put up a cross in there, and I wrote Bible verses in marker on my window, and I you know what I mean? I just had a Bible sitting there, and just the whole thing, right? And this was guys that had seen me do drugs and work construction for many years and did not know me like that, right? But I knew I just had to make that statement, right? And I don't know, I just stepped out, and it just he just rocks me. I don't know, he just made me new, and I don't want to do drugs, you know what I mean? I'm around alcohol now, and I'm not resisting anything. I no longer have the desire for what was in there before, right? And yeah, he's just done a work on my life, and I just had that tangible experience in my own life that I just can't deny, and I just followed it.
Wow. Lance, amazing. God awakened your spirit to his reality at a funeral.
Yeah.
And brought new life to you, grace to you. I know there's been so much that's happened. We'll talk a little bit more about your ministry at Red River, and but what an amazing thing that God has done in your life. So excited. But just now, what does your life look like now that you've been a Christian? You talked about being a witness for Christ. You want to tell everybody about him. How does that look like in your family now? You're a married man, and
yeah,
got a growing family.
Married man now, 4 years ago. I've got a 3-year-old daughter, Jade, and a 10-month baby, Kian. So that's just incredible, that I never would have thought that I would have done something like that. And you're never ready for kids. Like you think, oh, I'll do it in 5 years when I'm ready. It's like, well, that day's not coming because you're going to get ready by doing it. And it's going to be tough. Right. And I think about if I had done it way back 10 years before when I wasn't ready for it, what a mess I might have made of it. You know what I mean? Like what an awful mess that could have been. So for God to have given me like, the right woman at the right time with like everything like that, like his timing and all of that sort of thing, when I was like, right, when he had made me ready to respond, just an incredible thing.
I know for young fathers and mothers that having children is transformational. And how has that been for you? Like, what has been a big takeaway or two, from your marriage, from raising children? What has God been forming in your character?
Yeah, like raising kids, like there's just no way you could ever know what that's like until it happens. Like there's just no comparison in life for it. Like, I don't know, that baby comes out and you're just different from that point on. Like it's no longer about you, right? Like it's now about this baby and what you have to do to make sure that this baby eats and learns and gets disciplined and all of these different things. Like it's so incredible, and it forces you to grow up, right? Like in a very serious way. There's just there's no two ways about it. So it's just been incredible. I didn't think that like I would watch them grow up and every 2 weeks, every 2 months, they would like basically be a different person. You know what I mean? Like when they go from the baby crawling stage, one day all of a sudden you're like, oh, they're a toddler now. I can't tell you exactly where that happened, but like now they're this stage and now they're this stage. And it was just, I don't know. It's just incredible doing that and looking at pictures. You remember what Jade was like at exactly 2 years and 2 months. And you're like, wow, yeah. It's so brief that they are that person for each moment. And you don't know those transitions. Like you're unaware of those transitions. It's just that one day they're not there anymore. Yeah. And you barely remember what it was like. So.
And you hit it the nail on the head when you said, yeah, it's not about you anymore. I just had a flood of memories come back when you said that. And one of them, I'll just share one of them because I laugh every time. Because it was so much about me when we were first married, and I'm holding our second born, and she's colicky. Okay, I'd never heard of colic. What's colic? I've never heard of that. Is it English language? What is that? And my wife, she was exhausted, and so one night I had the colicky baby daughter. And I was in the rocking chair and I had the Weather Channel on and it was like looping and looping and I'm rocking and the baby is crying and, and I'm just like, I can't do this. I'm so exhausted. Not thinking of my wife or anything, just about how tired I am and how I had to go to work the next day. And so I had it, it was 2 a.m, 3 a.m, and that baby was not going to sleep. And I walk into our bedroom with her and I wake my wife up and say, I can't do this anymore. She's never let me forget that. Like, you're such a wimp.
Oh, you're colicky.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing. My wife's like I am blessed because in the night and stuff, like my wife doesn't even let me get up. She just does everything in the night. So I am like truly, unless it's my day off the next day, then there's a little bit of less grace. But if she knows I'm working, she's like, she'll get up. Yeah. So, but it's so true. Like I love what you said. As soon as that baby comes out, it's no longer about you. And that's a very biblical mindset as well of serving your family. And so, and John, your story is great because it shows how hard it is to serve your family and not think about yourself all the time. And it's such a tension in our lives. But yeah, that's an amazing testimony, Lance. Thanks for sharing that. I think it's important that you continue sharing that. I don't know, you probably know that, but want to encourage you with that with people and stuff. And so you became a Christian, you found Jesus, and then you went into ministry and went to Red River specifically, Red River College Polytech. So tell us just how you followed God's call, how you heard it, and that journey to Red River
Mhm.
after you found him and started serving him.
Yeah, so I was in Saskatoon. I was finishing up my first year, and I was just kind of like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do yet. I had no plans to go back home to Winnipeg. I had no plans, and but I knew I wanted to be in ministry, and I was just trying to hash that out at the end of the year. I just didn't have that direction yet. Because I was 32 years old when I came in as a freshman, Horizon Bible College.
Mm-hmm.
And that's about 14 years older than the next person in your class. You know, they're just getting out of high school.
Yep.
You're like 32. So that doesn't quite line up. And Jordan, you would know Horizon has a very small dorm. So
yeah, and you were in dorm, right? Because the
I was
thing
in
for
dorm.
me, I was not in dorm, so you kind of feel like on the outside all the time because you're just coming to class and leaving. And Horizon was a great culture. Like I only felt like that probably my last year because I was not living in Saskatoon anymore. But yeah, the dorm is so small, and the college is pretty small in general. So for attendance wise, so I can, yeah, it's so that dynamic itself. Like so that was in 2017, right, Lance?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, so I would have been around 27 or 28, and I felt that like bit of gap without even living on campus. So that dynamic is totally like, how was that dynamic? Was it hard? Was it weird? Was it?
Yeah, it was hard. It was
Okay.
super hard.
Yeah, but you did it,
I
and
did
you
it. I
did
did it.
it, and you fought. And like, what kept you going in those moments? Like that was when it was really hard. Like how did you find that?
Well, it was interesting because for years I lived with a great deal of like anxiety, social anxiety
Mm,
that I never wanted to admit, and then I masked with drugs, right?
yeah.
And when I was forced into that small environment, I was forced to face a lot of those anxieties, right? Because I realized my habit was in social situations, I would gravitate towards the people I got along with easy or like broke the ice with quickly. And then people, if I didn't, after that brief couple interactions, and it just becomes a little awkward, you know, and somebody
Yeah.
has to break through that, I would just leave those all awkward all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then like go with my comfortable ones all the time. And that can work in a big, well, it doesn't work, but in a big setting, you can get away with that. But in a small dorm like that, I was like, oh man, I'm really trapped inside a lot of really awkward like interactions that are causing me anxiety. So I didn't know what this was like, an actual therapy method at the time, but it's what I just so happened to do. I was like, you know what? I got to go up to each of these people, look them in the eye and embrace the awkwardness and get over it because there's too many of them and I'm in a small area, right? So it's like immersion therapy, right? Basically, like
There you go.
as I found out later that I was like, oh, I did immersion therapy on myself. That was good. And so I went up and I very intentionally went into these awkward situations to like say hi and smile. And then, even though I feel awkward, I just keep doing it. And it really helped my anxiety. So even though I didn't enjoy necessarily like, I did enjoy it, but like I didn't enjoy every moment of it the way an 18-year-old would.
Yeah,
You know
it was
I mean?
hard. It was harder. Yeah.
It was harder. Yeah, there was fun in there and stuff like that, but I was just on a different page, right?
Yep.
Which you should be from 18-year-olds when you're 32, right?
It is a good thing. Yeah.
It's a good thing. So that helped me kind of get over that being in that small environment, and I really took that out of that year. But at the end of that year, I was like, you know what? I'm glad I did that. I still want to be involved. I still want to go to all the stuff, but I don't think I want to live here, right? So then I was in the process of moving out, and then I had a job at the lighthouse. I was working part-time while I was in school. And then I was going to work at the lighthouse and then get my own place and then just be part-time in the school. until I figured out the next step. That's what I was going to do. And I liked that idea. It was actually really good. Saskatoon's such a beautiful city, and, I had a really great time there in general. And I was looking forward to living there. But then Calvary de Jong had asked me to come back to Winnipeg to look at the idea of going to Red River and taking over his ministry position there, potentially at Red River. So I came in and I talked with him about it, and he showed me what it all was. And I was like, oh man, that's pretty cool. And I thought about that, and I prayed about that. And I was just thinking, like, you know what? I'm coming from this secular environment. I'm a little out of place, even still at church. I just feel like I'm not churchy church, right? Like I don't know, just not. And maybe ministering to the secular world is just like a real smooth transition for me, right? Like being back in the secular environment I feel comfortable there. So then I just took that opportunity. I was like, you know what? This is pretty cool. I have a trades background. This is a trade school. I have a secular background. This is a secular school. You know what I mean? Like all of these things, I could go back home, and then, my parents, all my friends are there. It's good, right? That's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
And then I just decided you try to pray God's will into your life, and you're like, okay, how do I ever know if it's God's will or whatever, right? But I guess if you pray long enough, usually like a peace kind of comes over you, over what you're dealing with, and you can kind of just follow that, right? So I just kind of, prayed for a while, and I just felt this like comfort about the thought of it. And I was like, you know what, that's the one. I'm just going to go with that. So that's how I ended up there.
And God does use all those. I mean, God's calling. A lot of people just say, I'm called. And God's calling works in all the ways you just described. And that's biblical, right? Where God has certain passions or ties in people's lives that he can use to pull them back to a place, or and even you just serving him. That's all of our greatest call, right? That's our only call, is back to him. So, as long as you are taking care of that relationship with Christ, he can use you no matter what you're doing or where you are, right? So I just I love that idea of, and God does use those moments of like you described, like my family and my support, and like I like being in Manitoba, I like being around in the Winnipeg area, and God uses that stuff totally. So that's awesome. I love that. So what was your role at Red River?
It's a student-led club model.
Okay.
So took one class relevant to business or some skill that I wanted to do. And then I just took that to be like a student, as far as anybody was really concerned. And then I would just have a student club.
Mm-hmm.
And then we would just have events and Bible studies, bake sale, weekly Bible study, all of these kinds of things, events off campus.
Mm-hmm.
And then that was just kind of the model. The interesting thing about Red River is that it's a business school, trade school. So most people are only there on 1 and 2 year programs. So it's like throw the net, catch them, and throw them back. Like that's kind of how it is. Like the idea of like student leadership and recruiting and bringing people, like, your first year, now maybe in second year you could be a leader, and in third year maybe you could, you know what I mean? These sorts of things, you don't really have that luxury at Red River because your time with them is very brief. So that was kind of the model I had to adapt to. And it was so interesting to me, like, just because you're doing campus ministry, you think you can do it like the other campus, but the other campus, it's like you can't copy anyone's model. And you're the only one that really knows what your campus is like, because nobody else is there.
Yeah.
So you can look and learn from all these people, but at the end of the day, you got to put that puzzle together yourself. So,
and you just have to you kind of just have to be there too and figure out what's the climate of this campus, what's the history of it, because every campus has their stories, right? Every campus has, you might be the first one doing a Christian thing on there. You might be the 40th, right? Like everyone's in a different context. So I like that he described it as a puzzle. Like just consistently and constantly putting this weird puzzle together. You have no idea. Sometimes you can't even find the next piece. You're just like, It's there. I just don't know where to look. But no, I like that. It's a good perspective.
Yeah.
Also a little bit, Lance, about a breakthrough season on your campus when you were engaging there.
Yeah. So breakthrough season. like every year started off so slow. John, you would know because I would talk to you in September and be like, oh man, nobody here. This is just deadly. You know what I mean? Like I'd have these conversations with John all through September. I'm sure a lot of people do, but I did also. And I remember from maybe 2 or 3 years ago there, I was trying to get new recruits. I had nobody. I had no returning students. And I went to club days and I gathered all these people to sign up for my club, and I held an event and nobody came, or like a gathering and nobody came. And then the next week I did it again, and then one person came, right? And then the one person that came was like, hey, where is everybody? I thought you said there'd be lots of people here. And I was like, oh yeah, I thought there would be, whatever, right? So then I hold another thing the next week and nobody comes, right? Of course, the one person that came last week doesn't want to come back if nobody else was there, right? And then I was like, man, this is just not going well. And I remember I just said, well, you know what? I'm going to fast. I'm going to pray. And we're going to see what happens here. And I fasted and I prayed. And I bought a bunch of pizzas. And I sent out a message saying I had a bunch of pizzas to all these people that I kept emailing and stuff that weren't responding and showing up. I thought they weren't even seeing the messages. And I guess when they saw that there was pizza, then they would. And then so I bought 4, 5, 6 pizzas, whatever it was, like pretty much thinking I'm throwing these all in the garbage or leaving them in the cafeteria or whatever. And came in and I just sat there, and I had prayed and fasted that week. And, you know, I resided that was what God was calling me to do. And it was what it was, right? And all of a sudden, like 30 people walked in through the door, right? And it was just like, boom. Now all of a sudden, like, there's 30 people in here and they want to know about the club and what's going on and all this different stuff. And I was like, wow, what a crazy thing that was to have happen, like to go from nothing to that. And then for the rest of the year, we just rode that wave. Like people were just coming in nonstop. It was flat, and it just turned. Like it just turned. And if there's one thing I learned in ministry in these 5 or 6 years was that, you know, your expectation of what your group is supposed to look like is pretty much a useless motive. Like it doesn't really have anything to do with what God's doing there. Like God might be calling you to just be really faithful and have a quiet year and working on other things, working on you not quitting and working on like your perseverance and these sorts of things. And then maybe next year he has that big crowd for you, right? Or whatever is in your head. Like you just don't know. Like you have to just feel that, hey, God's calling me to do this. I'm going all in. I'm doing everything I can do for it. And it is what it is. Like, you know, you have to rest in that. And that expectation of being like this guy's ministry or this girl's ministry or this ministry, like that's just toxic. And I see that for a lot of campus workers. Like, you know, we have a gathering and people talk about all the awesome things that's happening at the U of R or, you know, UBC or whatever, all these places. And people can kind of start to feel like, oh, I wonder why my ministry doesn't look like Jordan's ministry, right? It's like, because it's not Jordan's ministry. Like God's doing something unique there and he's doing something unique with you. And you kind of need to get out of the way of that and get over yourself, right? Like we all, yeah.
That is so good, Lance.
It's good. It's awesome.
Good, great wisdom. And, you know, the thing you said is so true, that God is more interested in the worker than he is in the work. And so many times we get it backwards. We think that God will be more pleased with us if we do a good job and have a lot of fruit in the work. But no, it flows out of relationship. And you said it, like you came to the end of yourself with, you know, having one person show up consistently for maybe not even consistently for 3 weeks. And then it was fasting and prayer and pizza. So not just prayer, because you can pray and never do anything. But fasting, you know, coupled with a strategy to meet needs, turn everything around. And I just think anybody that's listening today, I think they probably have been very encouraged with what you just said about God working on your character. and leaving the results with them. So that was very good. Thank you. And with that, I'm sure there was a lot of stories that you could share. But what is one transformational student story that perhaps you can share with us today?
I think an interesting one it was like a transformational, let's call it group story. So I had these 30 Sikhs, and now they're coming, and still trying to find a way to translate the gospel to them, right? So I'm reading Bible studies to them, and we're doing Q&A and like a typical Christian Bible study, and it's not going bad, but I'm just feeling like, I don't know, they're not Christian. Like, this is just not quite landing the way I would want it to land with them, right? So I found through Gideons, some Sikh Bibles, and I got 30 Sikh Bibles, and I gave everybody one, and then I gave them a story to read, like every week, like just aloud in their own voices, and they read from John 2, Jesus turning water into wine, right? And they read the story in their own dialect, and I could hear them blah, 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 whatever they're saying. And then I asked them, okay, so what did it say? Like, what happened? You guys tell me now what you just read, because I have no idea what you said. Translate it back to English for me. So then I could hear them going again, talking amongst each other, 30 of them, but I could hear now they're arguing, right? Like this part, even though I don't know the language, I could tell now they're like, chirping back and forth. No, it was this. No, it was this. No, it was this. Right. Until they kind of got a representative to tell me what the story was. And they said, there was the guru, because they're East Indian, right? The guru, and he went to a wedding, and at the wedding, they ran out of beer, and he, turned the water into beer, and then they all continued to party. I was like, okay. So we're partway there now, right? Now you kind of get the gist of what's going on here, and I can just fill in the gaps and kind of be like, no, it was wine, it was a wedding, he had come to celebrate and these sorts of things, and it wasn't as much of a party as maybe you think, and like these kinds of things, right? So then I was just like, oh, that was really cool. So for the rest of the year, we used that model where they would just read the story, get as much of it as they could in their own understanding, and then I could just fill in the little bit in the middle, rather than me having to bring the whole context to them and hoping that I don't overwhelm them, right? So we just went with that model, and then they just really loved coming and hearing, being taught and asking questions and these sorts of things, And I didn't have anybody get baptized from it. I didn't have anybody really take that next step that you would want to see, like start coming to church regularly. Like, I felt like it was building, but COVID came in March as the year was building up, and we kind of just got chopped off there. And then a lot of them from there finished their things online and didn't attend a whole lot of online stuff. They were more geared to the in-person, and they went and got their jobs and kind of moved on from ministry, right? But we're just pretty cool how we were able to connect with them in their own culture, in their own language like that. So yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, wow, that is really neat. And those seeds that have been planted will continue to grow. The Holy Spirit waters those seeds, and so we know that wherever those guys are at, that they've had you in their life, caring for them, and you have been present, although you didn't know their language, but you cared to sit with them and not try to do something awkward other than to listen. And that's just a great model, Lance. I think it's very instructional. Awesome. Well,
yeah, I zoned out there for a minute. You know what? Yeah, it's interesting how you change your model to having everyone just read it and then see what they're pulling out of it before you taught. I really like that. It's very non-invasive, and it's very, like you said, they can pull their own cultural eyes onto it as well without you projecting your culture or bias onto them, right? And allowing that to come up and I think that's really awesome. And yeah, and then to learn to hear that it worked, we're going to start doing that too. So thank you, Lance. I love that. I love that. So, so in your ministry and in your life, like, doesn't have to be ministry related if it's not, but I mean, we all look up to people. We all have leaders in our life and influencers in our life that have influenced us. So for you, who have been the three most influential people in your life, and what has been their impact? Or do you have a story around them? Or that's a big question, but I'm back.
That is a big question. Yeah. So Calvary Young, who I took over the ministry for, like, he has a very different personality than me, and he has very different ministry style also.
Mm-hmm.
But he's so detailed and precise. I was under him in ministry for so many years, and he really helped me dial that in, like structurally, kind of what a ministry should look like or can look like, let's say. And then being able to follow his blueprint in that was really helpful to me, because like I said, I wasn't in church at all growing up. So even going to the young adults at Calvary Temple in Winnipeg, where I met him, like, I didn't know how to run a group. I didn't know any type of formula to start. I didn't know any of that, right? So, and he always allowed me to be a leader and have a say, even before the campus ministry. So it was really helpful. Like, I guess the way you would say it, or I've heard it said, is, everybody has to have somebody that believes they're a shepherd while they're still a sheep boy, right? Like, somebody has to kind of say, hey, you know what? I'm higher up in the authority of this at the moment, and I believe in this person, and I'm willing to give them my blessing that they are worthy of that, right? That they're ready for it. And he did that for me, which really encouraged me, especially because I didn't, like, coming out of drugs, I didn't think I'd be a leader in the church. Like, I thought I'd be the last guy to get to do that. I figured there had to be some church kid ahead of me in line for sure, right? With a better resume. But yeah, so that, yeah, but it turns out it doesn't usually work that way. But I didn't know that.
Yeah. It shouldn't work that way.
Yeah.
Sometimes it does.
But it seems like, coming from the outside, that, there would be a more qualified person than the guy on drugs. But seems the church likes that story somehow. So.
Well, I like how flippantly you say that. I think the thing that's so good about, or what I think is amazing about your story, Lance, is I've been seeing people in people younger than me. I've seen people, I don't know what to call it, but there's like this extreme conversion, right? And for lack of a better term, I'm going to call it that right now. But there's this turnaround moment in a lot of people's lives where they're living so far this way, and then they come over this way, and then their conviction, like, typically, and I know your conviction is very strong in certain things, and you're very, a lot of people that come through that moment, like, I have two people on my board at my ministry that has happened to them in different, it's not drugs, but it's different, it's atheism and it's other things. And they have strong convictions too. And they're like, why are people wishy-washy on this over here? And you know what I mean? So I think that's why the church gravitates towards people like you becoming leaders, because there's strong conviction, and the story is amazing. Like, it is a miracle. And I think that God is continuing to use you and using you. And I love that Calvary saw that, because that's what happened in that story, right? Calvary saw that in you, and he didn't hold that over you, or he didn't make you run some gauntlet to get into the position. He did what Jesus did. He said, hey, come follow me over here. and look what happened, right? So, but I want to encourage you, Lance, like, I know you say it flippantly, and that part of your life might feel like a totally different life or whatever it feels like, but your story is powerful, because there's people living that right now, and there's people in that, and I can't wait to see what you're going to do moving forward in the church as well. And I hope you continue, even in going into your new transition. I really hope that you continue to push into that. So do you have two other people that you would say are most influential, or?
Yeah. So then I would actually say like our local pastor, Pastor Bruce, from Calvary Temple Church, and he was big too because I used to come in, like it's a big church. Well, you guys were there for conference. It's a big church, and it's downtown. And Winnipeg's got its fair share of rough people downtown, so they get a lot of people that just wander in, and I was like one of those people.
Yeah.
And I would come to like Wednesday night Bible study in the little Bunting Chapel. It's called. It's a smaller chapel within the church, and like the average age until I walk in the room is like 81, right? Like it's like it's not really for young people, right? Like
Yeah.
obviously it's open for everybody, but
Not geared.
Yeah.
That's not the focus group.
Not a focus group. So I would stroll in looking rough, 25 years old, you know what I mean? So standing out like a sore thumb, right? Like hoping to not get noticed, but standing out like a sore thumb, unfortunately for myself there. And Pastor Bruce would take notice, and he knew me right from that time because I stood out so much. And he would always tell those stories about how I strolled into these like old people meetings and whatever. It just sat through them because like, I don't know, I had nowhere else to go. Like I just, like in life, like, you know what I mean? I just had nowhere else to turn. And he's just super encouraging, and he's such a great people person. And they brought me in to experience Christ. And he would always point to me at the prayer meetings to pray, and he just kind of gave me that same thing Calvary did. He just believed in me, and he spoke up for me, and he, when I succeeded, and he championed my story, and you know what I mean? And it just coming from a guy like that, who I know we're not supposed to say anybody in the church is prestigious, but when a pastor of a big church who's just a really awesome man of God, like, puts his blessing towards you, it's just a powerful thing, right? Like, so he was just always did that for me, and that was just always really, really powerful.
Yeah, I love that. I didn't realize Calvary Temple was such an urban church, by the way. When I got there, I was like, oh, this is like right downtown.
Yeah.
Man, that story alone is that's incredible. That's awesome. It's awesome to see God's seeds being planted. And as a pastor, like Bruce's faithfulness in that, because you don't know what's going to happen. Like you don't know what God is doing. You don't that as a leader, right? You don't know what God is doing even in the current room when there's 30 people arguing in a different language and you're like, what do I do? But he's doing something, it's amazing. So was there one more person you wanted to highlight before?
One person that then rocks me pretty good, like was just, I guess I'll use this one. The Billy Graham, like old school Billy Graham sermons online. Like I just found those and they just blasted me. I was like, whoa. I had all these perceptions of God being this really soft, meek, like basically almost like a sissy, right? Like in my perception at the time, like God's not strong, God's soft, right? That's basically how I'm seeing it. But then I'm like listening to these sermons of Billy Graham when he was young, and I'm like, whoa. There's this like total other side to it. Like, and I've been thinking about this for about 2 weeks. So I'll just share it now because I think it's relevant. But like, we're all told to be in the image of Christ, right? And the way that gets interpreted often is, we're supposed to be like the lamb. We're supposed to be gentle and loving and merciful and patient and all these different things. And that's all true, but that's half of who Jesus was, right? Like he was the lion and the lamb. So if we're just the lamb, like you get given into passivity, right? Like you're nice, you don't want to ruffle any edges, you don't want any waves. It's like you can't be 100% the lamb. You weren't called to be. You're called to be the perfect mix of the lamb and the lion. And the lion is like confident and assertive and powerful and like in control of their emotion, but like strong. You know what I mean? And does the right thing at the right time. And then be a lamb also, right? Like full of grace and truth. And when I seen those Billy Graham sermons, I was like, whoa, like that's the lion. You know what I mean? Like that is a side of Jesus that I did not know was a thing. You know what I mean? And I think just seeing that and realizing the call to embark both of those things in your life is
that's an incredible thing. And I mean, obviously we all struggle with it, right? But that's a powerful representation of who like a person or a man or a woman, like who they should be. You know what I mean? Like loving, and think about if there's somebody you knew that you could describe as loving and gentle and patient, but like powerful and assertive and like, you know.
Well, I think that's what biblical, because there's biblical godly power versus cultural, right? And the way culture perceives power and control. And I like, typically when people talk about the fruits of the Spirit, they talk about the ones you just listed, but very rarely do you hear sermons on self-control, right? Like even look at Pastor Bruce in your situation. He could have kicked you out of those Bible studies, you know, because, hey, this is an old person Bible study. You're not the demographic. Like that's happened to me, right? Where I was kicked out of something that I wasn't supposed to be in a similar context, right? So that he was showing strength in his self-control to allow you to still be in that room, you know? And I think there is this biblical version of power that comes through both humility and self-control and knowing when to be assertive, knowing when to speak, having that wisdom. And you talked about that, you said that, right? And having confidence in Christ alone, you know, our power comes from him and the Spirit and God the Father, and shouldn't come from us, because when it comes from us, that's when things go a little bit sideways. But yeah, I love that aspect of Billy Graham. So thank you for noting those three people. I love that. That was a great question to just end on, just hearing your influences. And I love that question. So where can our listeners contact you? If you want to give that out, where can we contact you, whether it's online, email, whatever? Just drop a few contact threads there.
Mm-hmm. So I guess I'll just kind of segue it a little. So my time as a Mission Canada worker is done. I am transitioning into, you know, something else. Mm-hmm. So with that, I won't have my POC email anymore within a month. So if somebody wants to get a hold of me, it would be lancepainting21@gmail would be the best email. Or if people could call or text too, it doesn't bother me. 204-330-6101. So yeah, if anybody wants like follow up, or if somebody wants to like, even somebody still in campus ministry anytime and wants to get, you know, me to speak or whatever, I'm still up for doing any of those sorts of things free of charge. You know what I mean? Like to come and just give a testimony or talk about God, or even give a sermon or something like that. Like, to stay involved that way with the Serve Network and Mission Canada and those sorts of things, like I would open myself up to that continually. I have no issue with that whatsoever. So if even people in the Serve ministry where I've done that for before, like, and are listening to this, like, you know, reach out to me in 6 months or a year or whatever, and I'd still love to do it, right? Like, and I would have no ministry to donate to, so you can keep your money. So
You have a business though there, right? Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. So I have a painting business. Yeah. And actually I'll add this too. We have 6 people in the business right now, including my partner, who were Segway club members over the years that we've actually been able to employ. So we have a girl that does HR. We have my partner who's in the office now with me. And then like 3 or 4 different people that we have painting on site. And then a number of other people that have come and worked for a period of time and then moved on and that sort of thing. So we've really been able to transition that well into working for the business. And then in the business too, we try to have Bible studies regularly. I would try to do it every week, but I haven't been able to make the mark every week. We're constantly trying to find a way to make that work, where people will be allowed to stop at work and just go on their phone and go to a Bible study for half hour, 45 minutes, and then go back to work. And obviously they get paid for it, like they can stay clocked in, and just make it a part of what we do in business, right? Because there's no reason I could do whatever I want. Right? Like, I have no excuse. So it's something
thanks. I'm like so encouraged. So thank you so much for sharing everything you did today, even with your business there and the Bible study stuff. And you're a very bold person. So keep that up. And I love what Christ is doing in you and through you. It's amazing. So thank you.
Great. Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much, Lance. It's been such a fun time with you, and hearing your story and what God has been doing, and now what he's doing in your departing transition from campus ministry. I have an affinity for everyone that paints houses, and I did the same thing. It was supporting my ministry habit for many, many years. And now I am finishing up painting my house for the second time in many years. So still at it, but not earning any money from it. But thank you so much, Lance. It's been great to interact with you today. And again, Jordan, we'll put the contact information, Lance's contact info, in our show notes. And we hope that today has in some way encouraged everyone out there in some way to help stir your thinking about how to practically serve students and faculty and staff on your campuses. And that's it for now. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.